My brother invited us to stay at his place, and we won't have to pay rent or bills. Ashley, we're relying on you for this. I work in finance. My husband, let's call him Bob, fixes cars, and we live in the house I grew up in. But it's not like my parents live there anymore. It's actually a family business that my dad used to run. My brother was supposed to take over the company, so he studied economics in college. Also, my skilled brother went to Oxford University overseas to study business management, then came back to the US and teamed up with my dad for a while. When my parents decided to retire and move to a place like Aspen, Colorado, to enjoy nature and relaxation, my brother took over the family business. As a result, they passed the family home down to me, their daughter. So my husband and I decided to move in there. It's in a great spot, less than 5 minutes walk from the train station, and public transportation is easy to get to. Stores, hospitals, and schools are all nearby, which is handy. It's nice to know that as our kids grow up and move out, we'll still have everything we need close by. It makes me thankful that my parents left us this house. We were looking forward to growing our family and enjoying life, but we never imagined it would all be cut short by what happened. Since we moved in, my mother-in-law has been dropping by a lot. She's always curious about my parents' business and how much they're worth. It gets uncomfortable when she starts asking, "Hey, Ashley, what's the deal with your parents' money? How much will you get when they're gone?" I find it pretty tasteless, to be honest. I don't want to be rude, so I just say, I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about it. I already have the house, so maybe there won't be much else. Even though I tried to brush it off with a laugh, she keeps pushing, saying, "Come on, they're getting up there in age. You never know what might happen." She was really fixated on talking about my parents' money. It felt like she was banking on their wealth. Even though I knew what I was set to inherit, I kept quiet. I didn't want to spill the beans to my mother-in-law or my husband, who's pretty close to her. But then, out of nowhere, something unbelievable happened. One holiday morning, around 8 a.m., the doorbell rang, and when I answered it, there were movers standing there. My mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's family had moved in without warning. I was completely caught off guard when the movers showed up. My mother-in-law and brother-in-law's family just waltzed in with big smiles, announcing they were moving in. Their enthusiasm sent shivers down my spine. When I turned to my husband for an explanation, he shrugged it off, saying, "What's the big deal if Mom and the others crash here? We've got plenty of space." He acted like it was no big deal to have them move in. I was already shocked enough by the sudden living arrangement, but then my sister-in-law dropped a bombshell. "Our brother invited us, Ashley. He said we don't have to pay rent or bills, so we're relying on you." Meanwhile, my brother-in-law started claiming rooms without asking, saying, "This room looks nice. Let's have it, Bob. Move everything out into the hallway." It all made my head spin. I couldn't believe it. They were treating my house like their own, claiming rooms left and right. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family had been overstepping boundaries for a while now, especially my sister-in-law, who even went through my bag without asking once. If this keeps up, they'll try to take over my room too. I've had enough. This is my house, and they're acting like they own it. I've reached my limit. I want everyone out. I'm not usually one to lose my temper or yell, but seeing these people move into the house my parents left me without asking and acting like they owned it pushed me over the edge. That's why I ended up shouting at all three of them. But then something I didn't expect occurred. "How dare you speak to us like that? You're the one who needs to leave." As soon as those words were out, I felt a sharp pain in my cheek. Did I just get slapped? It took a few moments for it to sink in. I was stunned. I couldn't believe what had just happened, and all I felt was the throbbing pain in my cheek. In that instant, something inside me snapped. I couldn't bear living with people capable of such disrespect. This house belongs to me, and I won't tolerate them treating it like their own personal space. I packed my things, planning to leave and inform my family about the situation. I needed to find a place far from here, so I rented a monthly apartment even though it meant a longer commute to work. When I broke the news to my parents over the phone, I could sense their anger, especially from my dad. He's always been supportive and caring, both as a CEO and as a father. I didn't want to drag my parents, who were about to retire, into this mess, but I had no choice. My inherited home was being taken away from me, and I had to do something about it. While I was staying in the monthly apartment, I was certain that my husband and his family were making themselves at home in my house. So I decided to take action based on suggestions from my brother and father. A few days later, during my break, I checked my phone to find numerous missed calls and messages from my husband. I knew exactly why he was reaching out. I had arranged for the water and electricity to be cut off. Since our house relies solely on electricity and we haven't installed solar panels yet, it must be quite challenging without power, especially in the heat. My husband's calls were probably about dealing with the situation. Just as I was about to ignore it, he called again, perfectly timing his call with my break. Hey, what's happening? There's no electricity and the water's not running. Did you turn off the electricity and water? I could sense the panic in my husband's voice over the phone. Since the house is mine and I'm not living there anymore, it only makes sense to cut off the utilities, right? That's why I had it done. I can't bear the thought of paying bills for a house I'm not even living in. So of course I had them shut off. But my husband was livid, demanding that I reinstate the contracts immediately. Just because he wants it doesn't mean I'll agree. If they want utilities, they should handle it with their own finances. Yet they always say, it's your house, so you should pay. But their actions contradict their words. Regardless, I have no plans to renew the contracts or foot the bill. If they're unhappy about it, they should leave the house. With that, I ended the call because my break was over. Later on, my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and brother-in-law each called me separately. They were all complaining about the lack of electricity and water. They griped about how hot and uncomfortable their rooms were and how inconvenient it was without running water. But those were their problems, not mine. After hearing them out, I firmly told them to sort it out themselves and ended the calls. I thought they were just being greedy and assumed they'd give up and leave soon. However, even after a week passed, they showed no signs of leaving. So I decided to take further action. I sought advice from my father's company lawyer and asked him to send a notice to my husband. The notice was about trespassing. They had unlawfully entered my property without permission, forced me out, and were now occupying it as if it were theirs. I warned them, all four of them, that I was considering legal action. Why did I receive a lawyer's letter? Did it have to come to this? My husband, clearly taken aback and unprepared for my strong response, approached me seeking a compromise. I knew they cared deeply about their reputation, and the thought of being sued would be a severe blow to them. They wanted to avoid legal trouble, but they also didn't want to give up their current lifestyle. So they were likely trying to persuade me to let them stay. I could see through my husband's intentions perfectly. Despite this, I refused to entertain their pleas. My husband finally snapped, losing his temper even though he was at work. He shouted at me, demanding that I back down and drop the lawyer, but his outburst didn't faze me. If anything, it only irritated me further. Who do you think you are, taking over someone else's house? I thought to myself, no matter how much you shout, I won't change my mind. If you insist on squatting there, I'll take legal action. Think carefully before you act. Despite his continued shouting over the phone, I paid him no heed and hung up. This was a waste of time, and I had already discussed divorce with my lawyer. When I arrived home, I saw missed calls from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but I knew they'd only be discussing settling the issue. I didn't want any more distractions, so I blocked their numbers to put an end to the calls. Eventually, my husband's proud family couldn't bear the thought of legal action, so they packed up and left the house. With the lawyer's involvement, the divorce proceedings progressed smoothly. I arranged for a cleaning service to restore the house to its former glory. Finally, I could enjoy the comfort of being back in my own, freshly cleaned home. Living separately from my husband's family and then in a rented apartment was fine, but nothing beats the comfort of my own space. Although some parts of the house are showing signs of wear, I'll need to think about renovating soon. I talked to my dad, and he recommended a great contractor for the renovation. Being on my own is surprisingly freeing. I can lounge on the couch without anyone nagging me, and I can eat whatever I please without judgment. Just as I was enjoying this newfound independence, I received a call from my ex-husband for the first time in 3 months. Initially, I ignored the call because I didn't recognize the number. But when it persisted, I reluctantly picked up, thinking it might be the contractor. However, as soon as I heard his voice, my mood plummeted. It was my ex-husband, from whom I had separated 3 months ago. I had already gone through the divorce process with the help of a lawyer, and we had agreed to stay out of each other's lives. So why was he calling me now, especially after changing his number? We had made it clear through legal channels that we wouldn't have any contact. There was no reason for us to speak. I was just about to end the call when he pleaded. Please, just listen for a moment. I'm desperate. Reluctantly, I stayed on the line. It turned out his company was facing financial trouble, and he was facing a pay cut. On top of that, his mother's health was deteriorating, leaving her unable to work. My sister-in-law and her husband are struggling financially. He's unemployed, and she's juggling multiple part-time jobs just to keep up. Unfortunately, most of her earnings are going towards paying off his debts. Meanwhile, my ex-husband is facing a pay cut, making it even harder for him to make ends meet. As they poured out their troubles to me, all I could muster was a detached, "Okay, I see." After all, these are the same people who invaded my home without permission, disregarded my rights, and then tried to force me out. It's hard to summon any sympathy for them. Their problems are their own to deal with. There's nothing I can do to help. My ex-husband's desperation only escalated. Please don't turn your back on us. We're on the brink here. We won't even have a roof over our heads or food on the table tomorrow. Remember, we used to be a family. Can't you help us? His voice trembled with near tears, but I remained unmoved. When I faced difficulties, he offered no support and even joined my mother-in-law in belittling me. Just like her, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law looked down on me, mocking my appearance and traditional values. They shunned me for being too old-fashioned. Their insults cut deep, yet they showed no remorse. As for my mother-in-law, she exacerbated the situation by pressuring me to conceive, subjecting me to strange remedies, scheduling unnecessary doctor's visits, and spreading rumors of my infertility. Looking back, my marriage held no redeeming qualities. My ex-husband, who used to be so caring before our marriage, transformed into a puppet controlled by my mother-in-law after we tied the knot. On the day my mother-in-law barged into our home, I happened to be out for an appointment. She expressed disappointment to my husband, saying I wanted to see Ashley, but she wasn't here. I want us to be friends, but I'm saddened. Upon hearing his mother's distress, my ex-husband lashed out at me without considering my side of the story. She claims she wants us to get along, but all she does is criticize me. Has my son lost weight because your cooking is so terrible? She says things like this loudly, whether we're at home or out in public. With her and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law all ganging up on me, there's no chance for us to have a harmonious relationship. I can't deal with people who behave like this anymore. No matter what you say, my decision stands. I can't assist you, so I'm ending this call now, and I don't want to hear from you again. With that, I hung up and blocked the new number. Knowing my ex-husband, he might change his number to reach me again. So I planned to change mine over the weekend. But before I could, they violated the lawyer's agreement. At 11 p.m., they showed up at my door, demanding entry and assistance. Open the door. We're family. You should take care of us. Their loud banging and shouting disregarded the late hour. What's going on at this hour? Please go home. You're disturbing the neighbors. When I approached the door, they seemed ready to force their way in. So I tried speaking through the intercom, but they ignored it, continuing to bang on the door and cause a commotion. Dealing with such unruly behavior left me speechless. I sat there feeling overwhelmed, contemplating whether to call the police when suddenly sirens blared from outside. It seemed a neighbor had taken action. Hearing the police approaching, the group, startled, assumed I had made the call and attempted to flee. But they were surrounded by onlookers, leaving them with no escape route. Soon the officers arrived and escorted them to the police station. I was questioned about the incident and provided a detailed account. News of the incident spread rapidly throughout the neighborhood, including to a colleague of my ex-husband's who happened to be among the spectators. By the next day, the entire office was buzzing with the story. Already struggling due to a pay cut, my ex-husband's troubles compounded when the company learned of his involvement with the police. He lost his job and couldn't afford his rent, leading to strained relations with his sister's family, ultimately leading to their shared living arrangement falling apart. Now, Bob and his mother reside in public housing, both working multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet. Even his mother has joined the workforce part-time, desperate for additional income.